Liberty Flames are 0-4. They look to break that schneid on Saturday when Gardner Webb comes to town. It is homecoming. And Chris Lang joined me on the Sports Buffet podcast to talk about the 0-4 squad of Liberty meeting the 0-4 squad of Gardner Webb. Somebody's going to have to win this one. Who's it going to be? Chris talks about that, the Kevin Fogg injury, out for the year, and much, much more. It's Chris Lang on the Sports Buffet podcast, Liberty Flame Football Talk.
You can talk sports with any Yahoo or Yahoo, however you want to pronounce it, but, talking to Chris Lang is not talking to any ordinary Joe, but it gives you the feeling like you're at the local watering hole or whatever. You just sit up and talk to a guy about sports, and he really knows what he's talking about. Chris joins me on the Sports Buffet podcast, and interesting that I'm going from using the term watering hole to the Liberty Flames now. College football, they get back into the swing of things this week. Before we talk about what happened with the Flames last time out, during the bye week for the Flames, what caught your eye with the Big South as a whole?
Well, certainly Stony Brook. I sat down and watched that game against Army since it was on sort of national TV. I guess the CBS Sports Network is national TV, but it's on that limited cable tier. But still, I mean, it was great exposure for them and for the conference to show that just what kind of program they have. I mean, especially with Miguel Mason running the football. I'm not sure there's a better running back in the country at this level. And yeah, I'm biased because I've seen him live a few times, but I'm thinking maybe the kid at Wofford, the kid at South Dakota State Zach Center that's been running his tail off, and the kid at Indiana State's pretty good, Shakir Bell, but man, Miguel Mason gets a lot of mileage out of that body of his. So, I mean, that just reinforced the fact to me that I think Stony Brook is by far the team to beat this week, and it's going to take somebody putting together a really special game to knock them off.
Anything else stand out about any of the other schools?
Well, it's a pretty light week. I think the only other teams that played were Charles Southern was off. Who else played last week? I can't remember right now. Coastal Carolina got smoked at Appalachian State, and I thought that could have happened just because they came off playing a pretty good game at Toledo, and Appalachian State had been struggling a little bit. They got blown out on their home field by the Citadel a few weeks ago, and they weren't going to let that happen again. That was a tough situation for Coastal to walk into last week. And then I'm trying to remember who the other team was that played. There was only three of them.
Well, should we tell people to look it up? Presbyterian, maybe?
I think they did. You're right. Presbyterian. They went to Davidson and won. Davidson's a non-scholarship team in the Pioneer League. They're in the same league that like Marist and Jacksonville are in. It would have been a really bad loss for the conference if Presbyterian lost that game, but they went up there and took care of business. I think they got their offense on track a little bit. So that's a good sign for them heading into conference play here this week.
I'm just proud of myself that I knew a Big South team that was playing football. So score one for me. Liberty's last appearance. We haven't talked since that game against Lehigh. What went well for the Flames that night?
Well, they ran the football, and that's something that they couldn't do at Montana, and it was a mix of Montana's defensive front being pretty good. Probably, I know Montana's struggling. They're still very good up in their front seven. So, and then the way the Flames fell behind, they had to abandon the run quite a bit. And their game plan too in that game at Montana was to throw the short screens, the short outs, the really quick passes, and move the ball that way. So, but they really wanted to establish the run last week against Lehigh. They did. Both Al Drake Sound and Sir Chauncey Holloway went over 100 yards, and they were both assets in the short passing game as well. I tell you what, with Al Drake Sound, it's all about consistency and it's all about drive with him when he wants to. I was talking to the guy Chuck Burton that runs the Lehigh Football Nation while he was down for the game, and his limited impressions of Allen were from the game up there at Lehigh last year and this year, and he said, this guy looks like he's got NFL talent at times, and he just has to apply it. When he runs hard, runs nasty, he's really good. But the question is, you get that from him from game to game because it seems to be an on game with him and an off game. They need him to play like that if they're going to have a chance because Sir Chauncey is just not the every down back. He's a great change of pace back and can do some things for you. But if you have Sir Chauncey run 25 times a game, that's just not really to his strengths there.
With good comes bad. What was it?
What? Another awful turnover that led to a game-winning touchdown. It's just they've had that happen 3 times this season. Where the Norfolk State game, the ultimate winning score came on a fumble return for a touchdown. Wake Forest, interception return for a touchdown. Montana, they had an interception was taken back back to the 6-yard line, and a fumble that led to a touchdown. In this game, Josh Woodrum got caught thrown into double coverage, and a defense on a sort of play where the linebacker picks the pass off Billy Boyko, and there's just no one there to get him because of where he picked it off. It was a short route, and the second he got past the line of scrimmage, it was done. So that was tough there. So they got some of those mistakes. I mean, that's it's easy to say that you're an 0-14 and you're better than that, but you keep on making just crippling, debilitating mistakes. They're not just little things. They're not a false start penalty here or there.
Right. This
bad turnovers, and they got to learn from that. Hopefully, I think their goal was they're going to play a tough schedule. They're going to learn some things. I don't think they expect to be 0-4, but certainly they've got to take the lessons from these games and apply them to the conference.
This may sound weird, but how much of those turnovers can be credited to mental?
To mental,
well, I mean, just in terms of kind of getting there into the same situation before, maybe pressing or just doing something that maybe is just not. I don't want to say not smart, but I mean just your mind starts thinking, here we go again type thing.
No, I don't think it's that. I think with Josh Woodrum, it's just the case of a kid that has played. He was in his second full game as a starting quarterback at the college level, and he hadn't played for, remember he redshirted last year, so we're talking November 2010. Cave Spring was the last time he played a competitive football game before going to Montana at start. So he's learning on the fly against, you and I watch enough high school football to know that there's not very many complicated defenses at that level, especially against the pass. So he's having to learn different schemes and learning his team at the same time while he's trying to work his way through things. So I think that's just a case of young kid making mistakes, and he's done a lot of good to go along with the mistakes he's made. So I think that's why Turner Gills maintained the starter going forward. So you just got to stick with him. You got to let him make mistakes. And I know it's painful to watch at times, but with a young quarterback, he can't be afraid to throw that pass. Mm-hmm. It wasn't a great pass, but be afraid. He can't be thinking, okay, if I make a mistake, I'm going to get pulled, because then he's just not going to progress. He's not going to do anything. They're taking any chances. And let's face it, good quarterbacks take chances. Aaron Rodgers takes chances. Drew Brees does. But they also know how to take the chances that don't put you in situations. That was a bad chance. If you threw it to, I think it was really single coverage with a linebacker help, and the linebacker jumped in on the play. But you got to recognize where that linebacker is and to know how to make that throw there, especially on a slant pattern.
As we record this interview on the Friday before the game, about an hour before the noon hour, last I'd heard is Kevin Fogg may not play. What's his status on what you know, and how much does it hurt if he doesn't play?
He's done for the year.
Okay.
I talked to Kevin yesterday. He's out for the season. He's on crutches. He has what he called a Jones fracture in his foot, which sent me scrambling toward Webb and Beats to see what a Jones fracture was, because he couldn't really explain it. It's basically a broken bone at the base of the pinky toe, so in the middle of the foot, and that's obviously a bad place to have a broken bone if you're a football player.
Is that similar to what Santonio Holmes has?
He's got the lip fracture, which I believe is more in the actual middle of the foot.
Okay.
But where the base of your pinky toe is kind of on the outside, but towards the middle, that sort of thing. So it's obviously it's going to rob him of his explosiveness and everything. So he's done. They're hoping to get a medical red shirt for him. He is not redshirted, and though he has played in 4 games, there is some precedent for getting that medical. So Carolina's tight end last year, David Durant, played almost as many snaps. Well, I think that's why it was a little surprising when we heard that he had got a medical hardship. They seem to do it in football more than they do in basketball. I've noticed that. It's really hard to get a 6th year in basketball, but this would actually be a 5th year for him. I'm sorry, not a 6th year, since he hasn't redshirted.
Do you think he gets it? I mean, if you had to bet?
Well, if I had to bet, would he get it?
Yes.
I don't know. The NCAA just seems to work in mysterious ways. I would think he probably has a good chance, but you never know.
How much does this hurt the Flames going forward this year?
No, it's a devastating injury. There's no downplaying it. He was their arguably their best cover corner, which surprised me. Is probably a little bit better than Walt Aiken's position in that regard. So you take that away. You take away the
before this season started, if you had an over-under, and I don't know if you did or not, on Flames wins, how different is it now in terms of, A, they've started 0-4, B, they've lost one of their better players for the season?
Well, I made my prediction in the newspaper. I picked 6-5. I thought they would lose 2 conference games. I thought they'd lose to Stony Brook, and I thought they would lose at either Coastal or Presbyterian. Presbyterian has not impressed me now this year, so I'm starting to think that would be a bad loss for them. But I really, at this point, you need to see Liberty win a game,
right?
And Hunter Turner Gill's got to be feeling that too. He's lost 14 in a row as a head coach. He's got to just want to get that feeling again of winning. And if they don't get it done against Gardner Webb, you start to wonder if what are they going to do at home? I mean, if they can't beat an 0-4 Gardner Webb team at home, that's really going to throw the seeds of doubt to everybody. But honestly, I didn't think they'd do any better than 1-3. I didn't think they were going to beat Montana. I didn't think they were going to beat Wake Forest. I thought Lehigh was a toss-up, and I thought they would beat Norfolk State. So, I thought that case scenario heading into this week would have been 2-2 anyway. So that's why I'm not so sure that there's all that much cause for panic. Even though the 0-4, it was bad, it's unsightly, but they haven't played terrible. And in the grand scheme of things, with the Big South getting an automatic bid to the FCS playoffs, the whole season can basically just come down to winning 6 games in conference.
What kind of 0-4 is Gardner Webb?
They're somewhat similar. They've played a tough schedule, not quite as tough, though. I don't know. I've been probably similarly tough. Sanford's 4-1. They played Wofford, who has the best rushing offense and rushing defense in the country in this top 10 teams, so that's a difficult team. They've played Richmond, who got off to a pretty good start, and then and played Old Dominion Cup at home last week, and then they played Pittsburgh, who, as we all know, beat Virginia Tech. So, they've had a tough start. Their offense just hasn't gotten going. They want to run the football, but they rank 114th right now in the subdivision in rushing offense, and that's going to be their key this week. I think they really have to get that going now that they're playing a little bit lower level of a team than the top 4 they've played. But to get it going against the interior of Liberty's defense, especially if Francis Baugh is back and healthy, is going to be difficult because they've been pretty good against the run aside from the Montana game.
When you get your seat on Saturday and you're watching this game at Williams Stadium, tell me what you're expecting on both sides.
Well, on the Liberty side, I'm expecting, defensively, I think they just want to establish some dominance up front, especially knowing what Gardner Webb wants to do. They're going to want to run the football. They're going to want to establish that's Ron Dickerson's personality. That's the way their team is built. So they've got some experience on the defensive line, where Gardner Webb's got some experience on the offensive line. That's going to be a matchup that they need to take advantage of there. And then I'm curious to see what, Lucas Beatty, it's Gardner Webb's quarterback, never really impressed me a lot when I saw him last year. He seems to have improved some. He got hurt in the Pitt game, but he's ready to go this week. His receivers are inexperienced, and Liberty's secondary, while they can be pretty good, they're not going to throw it towards him, but I would assume they're going to try to test Kenny Scott a little bit because he's got some experience in that position. Kenny's been good in runs here, been out there in a nickelback situation. That's a big step moving into a starting lineup where you're on the field all the time. So I would think they would try to test them there. And then Gardner Webb's linebackers will always been good. There's no exception there this year. Tanner Birch is a guy that's been pretty good stopping the run. So they're going to make an emphasis out of trying to keep Aldrich Sound and Sir Chauncey Holloway from both breaking that 100-yard mark like they did against Lehigh.
Final thing, always appreciate your time when talking about the Flames. Is this, is on the shock meter, where would you be shocked if Gardner Webb somehow stole this game? And B, is there ever a case to where you could see the brethren at Liberty really kind of turning on this team? Because I take it right now, even at 0-4, they're as supportive as they are, as realistically as they could be, I guess, if that makes sense.
Yeah, they're supportive. I mean, you lose homecoming to a fellow 0-4 team that when you look at the stats, is ranked at the bottom 10% in almost every offensive category in the football championship subdivision. Yeah, I would think they would start to turn a little bit, especially with a road game coming up after that. You just start to think it's going to go out of control. I think there's already a segment of fans that don't really quite believe what Turner Gill's selling yet, and I can't blame him at all for that. He hasn't won a game yet, so why would you blindly just support that? with the injuries and whatnot. So I'd be pretty shocked just because I don't think Gardner Webb has enough on offense to win this game. I think they're going to have to score 27 points, and they're averaging about 12 a game. So I don't see where that's going to come from. But yeah, it'd be a bad loss. There's no doubt it would be by far the worst loss this season. Norfolk State looks like a looking worse and worse by the week. I'm not sure how many more games they're going to win this year. So this would be bad. I think the pressure is absolutely on Liberty to win this game, much more so than it is on Gardner Webb, because even they understand that they're in the second year of a program reversal there. Steve Patton kind of drove that thing into the ground a little bit by the time he was done, and Ron Dickerson's getting his own people in there. It's not like Liberty. Danny Rocco didn't